the main reason why our tradition is, not a tradition of forest sadhus is because, times have changed and the world has changed. Context is everything. And the forest, remote life, removal from human society, well, that's never a bad idea. In the South Asian religious traditions, spiritual traditions, the fundamental problem is people. So in South Asian tradition, one of the fundamental aspects of practice itself is the practice of staying away from people. People are a disturbance. They're tense. They have needs. They have demands. They drain energy. They create confusion. They are vulnerable to possession by negative energies, which can unfortunately impact the practitioner. So, the whole idea of being away from people is really important. Today, there are 4 times more people on the earth than there were 70 years ago. And getting away from people is quite a bit more difficult. Another part of going out into the forest or into a cave is that, forests and caves, places away from human beings, are the dwelling places of spirits that were really important to the development of a seeker of truth in various Asian religion tradition, South Asian religious traditions. And the reason for that, the importance of those spirits is, it was spirits who, first of all, tested us. Spirits test us. That their intent is to steal our energy and confuse us and depress us and delude us, and so it is learning to deal with spirits that teaches us how to deal with people, and through persistent committed practice, focus on the essentials, constantly quieting our mind, lifting our spirit, living from joy. So, and then at that point, when we've mastered ourself, then when we're in control of our emotions and our mind, and we are, able to stay focused, then spirits become helpers to us. They can no longer mess with us, so they are compelled to support us. So living in the forest and living in the caves and, living by the rivers and away from people, it was always an important thing. Nityananda, had most of his life had no roof over his head, as far as we know. The change is that now with so many people, it's very difficult to go out in the woods. Also, another change that was really not so much a part of South Asia, even 150 years ago, is the idea of private property. I mean, what people ultimately owned was the fruit of the land. People had rice paddies that they owned the rice from. But, you know, anybody could walk through the paddy field on the pathways through it, and, you know, there were always pathways all over the place that people could transit through. And now if a sadhu is walking on somebody's personal property, especially in the United States, if you tried to walk across somebody's farm, they might shoot you. You can easily get arrested for trespassing. So, you know, the whole culture here is different. And what happens out of that culture is that, you know, also in ancient India, there were mango trees in the forest. There were many fruit trees. There were tons, I mean, unimaginable, unedible by all the people, amounts of goji berries, of, you know, sitaful, of chikus, of every kind of fruit and root and vegetable, and, like, you know, there were tubers, you know, and you know, I once met this sadhu in the hills up in Rishikesh, and, you know, he called me over to him. He spoke really good English, and I'm sitting next to him, and then after a bit, a wild pig came by, and he says to me, "Oops, my guru." And he jumps up and he follows this wild pig. He's calling his guru. And this wild pig is sniffing around, sniff, 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 and starts to root around in a particular place. And then the sadhu picks up a stick and throws it at the pig and chases him off. And then scrapes in the ground and digs up this tuber, which, you know, he said, I now have food for a month. This is a big tuber. And this is my guru because he reveals to me, you know, my food, nourishment for me. These days, that whole kind of culture is completely not possible. And it really doesn't matter, in a way, which jungle we live in. Whether we live in the jungle filled with snakes and spiders and insects and, you know, malaria and everything like that, and Ebola and dengue, or we live in the jungle of human society filled with every kind of toxicity of person and, you know, every confusion. It doesn't matter. What really matters is that if we, you know, really want to grow, we have to stay focused on growing and focused on our practice. We have to, each day, we have to liberate ourselves from our own anxieties, manage our own emotions, quiet our own mind, open our own heart, and live a life of generosity and unconditional love toward our fellow human beings. Unencumbered by and unentangled in the he said, she said horseshit of, you know, this toxic world we live in. If we can quiet ourselves and clear our minds, you know, in the context of all of this insanity that we live in today as human society. And if we can keep our bodies healthy in the context of the toxic food and the toxic air and the toxic water that we are constantly exposed to, we will undoubtedly become very, very strong. The poisonous spirits which possess human beings will be, to some degree, pacified, and some of them will begin to help us in our own efforts to, you know, grow spiritually and to serve humanity. So it doesn't really matter which forest you live in, you know, what jungle you lay your head, you know, on the ground in. It matters what your focus is every single day and how you are able to engage, transcend your own tensions and engage your own heart, because you can't engage your heart until you've transcended your tensions, right? It's not possible. And transcending our tensions, we can engage our hearts, and engaging our hearts, we can begin to, cultivate a genuine path for our spirit to begin to rise up from within us and express the unimaginable abundance which is its own nature in the field of our individual lives. Each of us has an immensely, immensely powerful spirit that is the very essence of this mind and physical body. And as we cultivate the opening of the chakras, particularly the opening of our heart chakra, and we, are able to expand the field of our heart, to the limit of its ability, and, we are becoming, we are dissolving our individuality. We're dissolving duality, and we are becoming ever more deeply, profoundly united with, God, which is unconditional love. So, this is our forest. For us, we've lived in, pretty much we've had an urban ashram. Our setting has been an urban setting. And that urban setting has been a matter of convenience, because I never wanted to charge money for teaching. I never wanted a business model to underlie the existence of our practice or our community. I wanted it to be about, as much as possible, about unconditional love and good work. So, and this is a model which I certainly developed it more than anybody else has ever in the United States. But I didn't start it. This was a model that I developed riffing off of Rudy, who had a business in New York. But it was me who created the restaurant in Bloomington that then, a restaurant in New York was created from, and a restaurant in Cincinnati, and et cetera, and in Boulder, Colorado, and on and on. All of these, the restaurants and the bakeries was a part of the model that I created, in which we supported ourselves through our good work. And so living in an environment gave people the opportunity to work in the fields that they were interested in. The food service business was kind of an entry into that everybody, exited and went on to do something else from. And that was wonderful. And lots of people developed, various and interesting careers from the food service business contact, whether it's mathematician, computer scientist, or, there were doctors, off doing metadata analysis and, teaching businesses how to use it. There are all sorts of things that happen. So, all wonderful. The idea, though, was never that we should become ambitious and have recognition. Who cares? The thing about ambition is that, that sets you on a path that is denigrating to your own self. Why should we be ambitious and compete? that's distasteful to me. I think that, the idea is not that we are ambitious and want recognition, but that we are committed to doing the best work possible. That we have, that we're deeply curious about the fields that we are working in, and we understand that that skill development, is really what, in many ways, trains our minds to be able to cling to the truth and to penetrate, all of the falsehoods that are constantly being perpetuated around us, about every aspect of our existence. So it's having a trained mind that is capable of focus and capable of, of logical analysis and progression that then becomes the tool that supports us, as we live in this world, in our spiritual work. Oh, and I think if you do good work and you express it selflessly, eventually you're going to, be recognized for that, because, the truth is there's so little of it, and there's so many people who've misunderstood and have become ambitious and are seeking recognition. They all fight it out among themselves and make them all, and each of them makes the other ugly. And the whole process, is cannibalistic. So it's so much better to just be devoted to the quality of your work and the quality of your service, and to let the animals duke it out, for all of the fame and recognition. It's, even in the spiritual world, like people who say they want spiritual lives, there's so much lying and, there's so much greed and so much misrepresentation. It's really kind of ridiculous and disgusting. And, each of us, we have to be committed to practice, and that the practice is, releasing tensions and engaging our own spirit and opening ourselves deeply and, reaffirming and refining our understanding of the fundamental truths of our existence over and over and over again. These days, perhaps the jungle of humanity is a better jungle than the jungles of, South Asia. Certainly they're better jungles than the forests of North America, which, have people with stupid people, drunken people with really big guns walking around there ready to blast anything that moves. No tradition is written in stone. Every tradition has to, in time, give way to a new tradition. And, this is the message of the story of Abraham. It's the message of the story of Moses. It's the message of the story of Jesus. It's a message of the story of Muhammad. There are many stories that are similar to that in every culture. So, the current tradition is that we live among people, that we engage and dissolve our tensions, that we can have access to our hearts and live a life of unconditional love and service to, all the different levels of humanity that we engage every day.